There you are, Tom. Go.
Here we are, man. We're live. We're live. It's December 20. What day is it? 21st. I was like 20th? No, it's not the 20th. 21st. December 21st, man. I got to say 2022 uh flew by, especially the second half, right? Is it just me or did like the second half of 2022 like just in a blink of an eye it was gone, right? So yeah, I mean, here we are, like second to last show of the year, second to last time we're going to be in this room this year. Crazy, crazy.
I might get teary-eyed, Tom.
Well, let's not go that far. Let's not get crazy. I mean, I don't want to judge. If you get emotional, you get emotional, right? If that's your thing, if you're an emotive person, if that's your thing, like, if you feel moved, so be it. Uh, I'm dead inside, so I don't really cry. But that's my problem. I shouldn't put that on everybody else. So if you want to get emotional, Dom, I'm here for you, bud.
I may. I think the older I get, Tom, the more emotional I get about things, whether it's injustices or things going on in the world or stories people tell me, or all of a sudden I emote. That was a good word for it, emote thing. So, hey, Prof T's in the house. Prof T killed it last week, Tom. You left me hanging and ditched me, and Prof T gave because I can't do this alone. Prof T finished strong for us, wrapped it up. She was on point.
For the record, I didn't ditch you. I had a in person event to go to, where I had to go help some folks work on their brands and messaging and creating content for their organization. So I was going to do a little sort of lunch and learn program with some local business folks here in the Hudson Valley, up in New Paltz. And so I didn't ditch you. I had an obligation that I had to abide by and had to help out with. So it wasn't that I was just like, forget you, Dom. Good luck, buddy. Sink or swim. I'm out of here. Besides the fact that, like, come on, you swam, right? Like, you're not going to sink. Don't
So
don't
that
try to don't try
only
to play the victim on me, buddy.
only because I had Prof T as I started to sink. Prof T was there for me. I burnt out. Prof T stepped up to the plate and just knocked home run. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna not the smartest guys in the room. Tom says this is the second to the last show of the year. Last week he started telling us about the premises of the the art of storytelling, and then he ditched us anyway. We'll talk about that later. But so we'll get back into that today. But let's invite some people up here. And Prof T, what's going on today?
Hey, good morning, everybody. The dynamic duo the other day, like I was so happy to help, but I was nervous, you guys, because this is such a well-oiled machine, this room. But I'm always happy to step in and help. What I got going on today? Well, right now I'm pinging in my friends, um, and I am gearing up to do some Christmas shopping, you guys. Ugh. I do stuff online. However, I like to go see stuff, especially when you have grandkids. And yeah, I'm going to be going to see Kevin Donaldson, my friend. I was on his podcast. He's having a reunion. So I'll be in Clifton, New Jersey. Yay, tonight. All right, that's what I'm doing. And I'm also listening, learning, and happy to be here. Thank you, Prof T from Philly. Yep, it's still chilly. Thanks.
I want to chime in for a second about like going to shop in person, because I did most of my Christmas shopping this year online, but I did some in person, like physically going into a store. And like, little plug for your industry here, Dom. Um, I have not been in a bookstore in a long time, and I walked into the bookstore and I was like, and maybe I'm a nerd. I don't know. Like, maybe this is just me, letting my inner nerd shine through. But I was like a kid in a candy store. Like, I bought a bunch of books for people. But then I was like, I want that book and I want that book and I want that book. And like, before I knew it, I had a huge stack of books, and somebody was like, do you need a basket, or do you want us to hold those up front for you? Or because I was just walking around with this huge armful of books. But yeah, man, I had forgotten how cool and engaging and fun it was to go into a bookstore. So I would encourage everyone, if you have the chance, I think books make an incredibly good, thoughtful gift for people. And yeah, go into a bookstore, go support a local bookstore and walk around in there and just nerd out. That's my PSA for the publishing industry this morning. I just wanted to jump in and say that.
Hey, man, we appreciate you. And don't give up on those bookstores either. The local bookstores that have trinkets and homemade things in them, and independent authors and publishers and things like that. But I will say that some people think you can't get into a Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. It's BS. You can get your books into Barnes and Noble. You can walk into the store and sometimes they'll pick them up. They need to be returnable. Sometimes they'll just buy a book directly from you. I work with a lot of bookstores where they would just be like, invoice us. Sometimes I write marketing campaigns to Barnes and Noble in New York, and they say, we're going to buy this many books. Sometimes we go through bookstores. So there's this thought that my book can't be in a bookstore. Well, that's BS. And then there's also, I'll give you the counter. I sometimes, truth be told, I have boxes of books at my house. Sometimes people want to get in bookstores, and then you get in bookstores, and it's not always the best thing in the world for you. If I put Tom's book on a random Barnes and Noble shelf in Minneapolis, if you're not promoting it, if the area doesn't know about that book, if they just stick the spine of your book on some random shelf, it's probably not going to sell. And then 30 days later, 60 days later, they do, because to get into those stores, books need to be returnable. They return them. They charge you shipping, and they charge you a $2 fee per book. So that's the reality that people don't know. Like I'll talk to an author from a guy that's never written a children's book, and he's in finance, and he says, I want my book in Barnes and Noble. Well, one, you haven't even promoted your brand. You haven't promoted the message. Nobody knows you as a children's book author. I'm going to tell you in advance what's going to happen when you get into that store. Now, sometimes they position you nice on the corner and give you a little speaking thing and stuff like that. So they can sell as well, but people should know there's two sides to that coin. All right, we're going to get moving here. Sorry, not the smartest guys in the room. That is the truth. We are going to talk storytelling. Tom, before we meet Joyce and Julie, Johnny and John, and whoever else wants to talk, let's start this process of, we were talking before we got on here about, you were saying that if you do this, you're a storyteller. If you do that. So let's get into this a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Dom. So I think you had correctly pointed out to me that a lot of people don't see themselves as storytellers, right? And my response to that was, if you talk to other people and you relay accounts of your life to those other people, i.e., if you come home from work and talk to your significant other and tell them about your day, then guess what? You're a storyteller, right? If you go out to networking events and you relay experiences to other people at those networking events, if you tell them about things that have happened to you or you've seen happen or heard about or read about, etc., guess what? You're a storyteller, right? We're all storytellers is really the point here. And so what I wanted to talk about was a framework or a filter that I think is incredibly helpful for people to kind of put their stories through. And this comes courtesy of Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park. They've written thousands of episodes of South Park. And one of the ways that they make sure that they tell a good story in each of those episodes as they write those plot lines, as they write those stories, those little stories that they tell in each episode, is they use this filter. So every story has plot points, right? There are sort of highlights that we have to bridge between, right? And the general thing that a lot of people do when they bridge between those plot points is they use a phrase, a very simple phrase, and then. And the problem with this is that it basically means the storyline, the plot stays flat, right? If you're just using and then in between plot points, then all you're really doing is recounting facts, right? You're essentially verbally laying out a timeline. You're saying, first, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and so on. And it's just very flat. There's no arc, there's no momentum, there's no ups and downs, right? So the trick that Matt Stone and Trey Parker came up with is, Guy Clark is in the chat. He got it right. It's but therefore, right? So replace the and then with but therefore, and you can use the but therefore to supplement what you're saying too, to kind of add color and context to a plot point or a storyline. I'll give you a very, very, very quick, I promise, super quick, one sentence story example. Okay. So the first version of the story is very basic, very straightforward, does not use but therefore to either supplement or replace and then. And it goes like this. My wedding cost $10,000. My divorce cost $25,000. Okay. If we just supplement that with a but therefore, there's a couple of different ways to do this, but if we supplement with a but therefore, you get my wedding cost $10,000, my divorce cost $25,000, but both were worth every penny. Now all of a sudden, right? And Dom, I can see Dom's face. I can't see everybody else's face, but Dom got a little grin with that but, right? So it gives you color, it gives you context. It lets you know if that was a true sort of statement from my personal story, right? Which it's not, for the record. But if that were a true statement, then it gives you insight into my state of mind, my emotional being, how I think about things, what's valuable to me. It gives you all of this color and context in just a few words that you don't get if you just say, my wedding cost $10,000, my divorce cost $25,000, and I liked both, or I was happy about both, or whatever, right? So like the and doesn't give color, the but therefore gives color. It gives momentum to the story arc. It gives character to the plot points. It brings the story to life. So that's what I want to encourage people to do today, and that's what I want to talk about is storytelling and how we can use these kinds of filters. And if anybody else has other ones, I'm all ears. I love this stuff, and I know Dom does too. So how do we use these things in our day-to-day lives to improve our skill set as storytellers? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. That's what I wanted to what I had planned on talking about last week, but we got off on a tangent and it was fantastic. So we rolled with it because that's what we do. We roll with the punches. So yeah, with that, I'll give it back to you, Dom.
Okay, let's do this. So storytelling tips, however, anything, if you want to go, but therefore, or you want to say like something that's driving me crazy. Some of the videos I see on social media, I swear this one guy I follow, and I love the guy, but I don't love his videos. I swear he gets on and then decides what he's going to talk about. And it's there today. And I'm like, I love you. I want to support you, but I'm not going to listen to this if you haven't even planned out what you're going to talk about, and it's not like he's at the, a Steeler game or at Argentina or at the World Cup and doing a video live. It's like, I think I need to do a video today. So I'm going to sit on that video until something interesting happens or until I can think of something. I am not tuning in. I'm tuning out. Prop T, what do you got? Story tips, and we're going to go to Julie and Johnny, our master storyteller, and let's keep this rolling. Go on, Prop T.
Hey, good morning. Yeah. So, just three things quickly. Number one, I learned this a long time ago. Facts tell, stories sell. People like to hear stories. Number two, people like to hear stories that involve a hero. I mean, when you think about movies, that's why we go. We go with that up and down. There's a story, and we follow that person's journey. And everybody likes a hero, so it's always important to, when you have a story that you're sharing about yourself or someone else, it's extremely important to have a heroic ending. Now, there always isn't, but it is a rule of thumb. That's what sells. And then, thirdly, one of my coaches several years ago taught me the art of storytelling, and explained it. It's like ice skating. Ice skating is very fluid, it's formed, it's beautiful. You just follow, you're mesmerized by watching a good ice skater. So that's what I learned to do. Just when you're telling your stories, you have to take the person on a journey. And it's not speed skating, it's an art. So those are the three things: facts, tell, stories, sell. Always find a hero in your story and in the stories you're sharing. And thirdly, make it like a beautiful ice skating. Thank you. Prof T, back over to you.
Prop T, fabulous. Go on, Tom.
I think there's two quick things I want to hit on out of what Prof T just shared, and one is that I think facts on their own, she's right, they don't sell, and here's why. It's because they're boring, right? If you laundry list facts, then like how many people would be enthralled reading the data spec sheet on their iPhone or their Android phone, right? Almost no one in this space. Some people would be, and I don't want to. I'm not here to like put anybody down who would enjoy that, but most people would not be enthralled reading a data spec sheet on a piece of electronics, right? They're available. So what you want to do is you want to convey that information through a story. So facts are important, especially in the business context. And what I tell clients all the time is what you're asking me to do, because this is what I get from clients, is they come to me and they say, I want a video, and I want to cram this 10 pounds of information into a 5-pound bag of a video, right? And my response is, what you're doing is you're laundry listing information, and you're missing the fact that nobody cares about the information if you don't contextualize it. So tell a story that gives you the opportunity to contextualize the information for the audience. And that's the other thing that's super important to remember, is whenever you're telling a story, you're telling it for the audience, right? Your job as a storyteller is to take that audience on a journey, right? Like Prof T's talking about. That's your job. That is your goal as a storyteller, is to take them on a journey. So remember that when you tell stories, don't tell them for yourselves. And I guarantee you, if you listen, we all have people in our lives who we hate listening to tell story, like who we hate listening to when they tell stories, right? We all have those people. They're terrible storytellers. Somehow we always get trapped at like family functions into like listening to, Aunt Edith's story about X for like the 47th time, right? We all hate it, drives us nuts. The reason why they're such bad storytellers, keep an eye out for this. I'd be willing to bet that most of them are really bad storytellers because they're telling the story for themselves, not for you, the listener, right? So be there for your audience. Watch your audience. When you tell people stories in person, look for reactions, right? And remember those things. Like, remember the places where somebody laughed, or they looked surprised, or they emoted on their face. Like I talked about before when I gave that one sentence example. I saw Dom smirk, right? And so I knew that I had taken him somewhere, right? That I had elicited an emotional response with that one sentence story. And you can do the same. You just have to look for it. Look for those opportunities, and don't be like Aunt Edith, right? we all have one of those folks in our family, I think.
my house is about to turn into like Christmas vacation with some family coming, and I have what is it? I have a cousin Eddie that is an uncle that is coming, and he's staying with me. And exactly what you're saying is the case. And I'm thinking, oh no. Hey, Prof T, when Prof T said like would she say beautiful artwork? Is that the term she used? Art? And I just thought of like there's so many different ways. Like a book's art, a song is art. Like our friend Ching that takes pictures, that's art. So when you're telling these stories, it's an art form, and they deserve. And here's if somebody wants to have somebody record their book, and like you can like talk into like a thing and they'll record it and make it a book 20 days later. Okay, that's great, and maybe that works for you at that time. But I believe in the art, in the beauty of, in the word, of the twist, of the arc of the story, and things like that. So sometimes I'm not against that, but the beauty of these stories that you're going to take away by speeding through them, or taking this faster route, well, you may be missing something in the long run. So that hurts me sometimes when I see people taking that route. Okay, let's go. Julie, teach us about storytelling. What do we need to know? Like when you blacked out, she didn't faint. She blacked out. So go on, Julie.
This is really good, guys. I'm actually speaking on this topic. I have, I don't even know. I'm unprepared, as you can tell, but I'm speaking on this topic in January in front of a live studio audience. So this is good, getting me thinking about what I'm going to talk about. But storytelling, and we have to think of modern storytelling. And I love everything Prop T said, and Tom and Dom. And it seems like Prop T's cat, Milton, in the background has a story to tell, but we're not quite sure what it is. But it has to evoke emotion. It has to evoke a connection. And I'm sure Tom can speak on this, the art of visual storytelling, because everybody wants to get a little glimpse into your life, especially if you're marketing something, or if you are promoting or wanting to get the attention of readers or an audience for your podcast. People want to see you, and the visuals have to match the story as well, which is an art within itself. And to capture and be unforgettable, and everything in terms of storytelling right now, except for books, seems to be in 15, 30-second sound bites or videos. So how can you, and think about this, how can you really emphasize your story, your message, something that's not data driven, but backed up with your expertise in whatever you're talking about? How can you make yourself unforgettable, memorable in a 15 to 30-second clip? So that's kind of what I'm throwing out to you guys. Thank you.
Julie, can we dig in on that? How
I would hope
can
so.
we? Come on, you got suggestions?
Well, I'm always a person to think outside the box. If I've got a good story, or if I'm sharing somebody else's story, I love to animate stories. There's a great app called Beyond. It's super easy to use. You can turn people into cartoons. Um, you can go on location, if you will, and get people's views. I think, and I'm probably guilty of this, just sitting in front of your computer and recording or writing, it gets boring after a while. So add some spice to it, and don't forget to emphasize like that big, I don't want to say clickbait, but that big, but therefore, if I will quote Tom or the guys of South Park, grab their attention in the first couple seconds, because otherwise they'll scroll by you, they'll click past you, and figure out what element of your story can generate the greatest attention for those people that you want to reach.
I think my short answer to this question of like how do you become unforgettable is really straightforward, and it's be authentic. Be authentically who you are, be an open book.
But what if you're
And
authentically boring?
I mean, then
Seriously,
you're not,
I'm saying this.
but seriously, then so here's the thing is I think this becomes a little bit of a slippery slope, because If you try, it kind of goes to that old adage: if you try to make everyone happy, you only succeed in making no one happy, right? So something, or words to that effect. I know I'm paraphrasing that. It's not an exact quote, but anyway, the point is that if you try to be unforgettable to everyone, you're going to just wind up being very forgettable because you're trying to do too many things at once. You're trying to make too many people happy at once. The way to be really unforgettable, because you're never going to be unforgettable to everybody, right? The way to be unforgettable is to be authentic, because by being authentic, right? By like being an open book and really laying yourself out there bare for everyone to see, what you do is you create opportunity for people to empathize with you and to form emotional connections with you, right? Through that empathy, right? You enable people to see themselves in you. So you will become unforgettable to the people that identify with you, right? You're never going to be unforgettable to everyone. You're only ever going to be able to be unforgettable to a subset of people. And I think the best way to reach those people is to be an open book, to be authentic, to really let them in so that they can empathize with you, they can emote, and they can form those emotional bonds and start developing a relationship with you, even via, virtual means, via, digital means, via social media, etc. You can start to do that. You can lay that groundwork, but I think you can only do that if you are an open book, if you are genuinely authentic to who you are, and you show all of your all sides of you, good and bad, winning and losing, successes and failures, right? That's the only way, I think, to really become unforgettable to people, is to be incredibly authentic to a point, like to a fault, right? I think that's kind of the way to do it. That's my thinking, because you can't be unforgettable to everyone.
But not TMI. Some people, I'm just shocked at the stuff they'll share online. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, can
I
you
think,
take this
no,
back?
100% agree. There are parts of my life that I will never talk about in this space, right? Because it just doesn't have a place here. It's not appropriate, right? And that's not why we're here. But I am who I am, right? It's about being true to who you are, and being an open book in that sense. That's really the way in which I mean it. Obviously, and as Julie correctly points out, don't share every intimate detail of your life. There's stuff that other people just don't need to know, and you should keep to yourself. But I think we all have secrets from the world, and that's okay. But you should be authentically who you are. You should be authentic and genuine to who you are as a human being, who you are as a person. Wear that on your sleeve and let other people see who you are. So yeah, that's my thinking on how to do it. What do you think, Dom?
This idea of being boring is something that, well, one, could you practice? Do you need to go to like a Toastmasters or something like that? Could you drill down into your expertise, like niche down in, like if you were talking about computer programming, and if you niche down into that and you were an expert in that, well, am I expecting you to make me laugh and chuckle? Not necessarily. I want the data, and I want to be informed. So and then I wonder from you guys, do you need to always be the face of the brand? Or can I, like, let's say I was boring, well, maybe I should be interviewing other people. Maybe I should be highlighting other people. Maybe I should be sharing other people's content and be like a CEO stepping into the background. Maybe they're not the best CEO to be out in the spotlight every day. Maybe they should step into the background. So is that all right? Julie, I want to go back to you. What do you think about that, since you brand people? Is that ever a thought where you're like, sometimes I'll come across an author and they wrote a book on something so odd or so polarizing. I'm like, well, you can't be the face of this. You can't be the one who sells this book, because the story is a good story, but people are going to hate you. So you can't be out there at the bookstore selling it, because the story's not doesn't paint you in a good light. So Julie, back to you on that. What do you think?
I don't know. If you can't sell your own book, I feel like there's a problem there, just specifically for books, because as an author, I believe that you are your brand no matter what. You're the one selling it, and if people like you, they'll buy it. If they don't, they won't buy it. And, I've met some really boring people in my life, let's just say, and I think it takes an outsider to come and pull that story out of you because we all have something unique. We all can connect in some way. It's just a matter of finding that gravitas or that something explosive that will connect with people and take you out of your cocoon. I think boring is being safe. And do you wanna be safe? Do you wanna be in the comfort zone your whole life? Because that seems boring to me right there. You.
Good stuff, Julie. Okay. I'm glad, Johnny, I'm glad you stuck around because this topic was like, we waited a year and came up with a topic that was perfect for Johnny. So, Johnny, where do you weigh in on this as the artist you are when it comes to a story?
Good morning, multiverse. Hey there, friends and foes. For those of you who don't know me, as Dom is alluding, I do make my living as a storyteller. That is what I do for a profession, and it reflects itself in different forms, in print, in comic books. I do literal in-person storytelling, taking people on a journey through downtown Nashville, sharing the stories of haunted locations 3-4 nights a week. And so I'm doing this every single day. And I have so much to say about storytelling and about elements of storytelling. First, to Julie's question, what if you're boring and authentically boring? Embrace the boring. Two of the most entertaining storytellers I've ever seen are Ben Stein and comedian Stephen Wright. They are two of the most boring people on the planet, but they know they are, and they lean into it and they embrace it and they make it part of their identity, and it works. Also, when it comes to storytelling, I always adhere to the edict that less is more. You don't have to tell everything you know. Save something for the sequel. Um, and Tom, you're right. 30 years ago, I coined a phrase that I've heard quoted back to me over and over and over the last 30 years. If you try to be everything to everybody, you'll end up being nothing to nobody. And the thing is to embrace who you are authentically and tell the story from your perspective, but all good stories are a hero's journey. And the best stories place the listener or the receiver, the audience, in the place of the hero, either through a relatable character or literally by, making them part of the interactive, immersive experience. And that's a lot. But those are my thoughts. And I'm Johnny. I'm done. Ta-da!
So Dom said to me while you were talking, Johnny, he said Tom's right. That's all you. You're up. You got to talk. But yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think you're dead on accurate when you say if you try to be everything to everyone, you'll end up being nothing to nobody. That is 100% true. People get very caught up in that trap or sliding down that slippery slope of trying to make too many people happy. People do it, businesses do it, brands do it, right? They get caught up in that trap of trying to just be everything to everyone, trying to make everyone as happy as possible. And what you end up doing is just not really affecting anyone. And so you have to be willing to stand in your values, right? And this is a conversation I had just yesterday with somebody. We were talking about a mission statement, right? Now, flash your mic if you have a mission statement for your brand or your business, right? So I see a few. All right, good. So we got some mics flashing. I like that. So here's the thing that I think is really crucial with mission statements, and I think if you have a mission statement, it'll help inform how you tell stories, especially around your brand and your business, right? And I'll use mine as an example, right? My mission statement, my business's mission statement is to humanize the world of business through better communication, right? Period. That's my mission statement. Now, there's a couple of things that are really important about having a mission statement like that, right? One is that it is unattainable, and that's actually a good thing. And let me explain why. It's unattainable. There's never going to be a point in my life where I lean back in my chair, I crack a beer, and I check humanizing the world of business off my to-do list, right? It's never going to be done. There's always going to be work to do towards that goal. And that's good because what it means is that as long as that is the mission of my business will always have purpose. And I will always have purpose inside of that business, right? There will always be a reason to keep pushing forward because we will always have work to do towards humanizing the world of business, right? Through better communications. So it's really important to have that kind of big overarching mission statement. And then the other thing too is when you have that big overarching mission statement that you truly believe in, it makes it really easy to get behind it and be authentically behind it, right? And that's something that goes back to what Julie was talking about with, like, if you can't sell your own book, you got big problems, right? Like, if you put out a book, if you're an author who put out a book that you can't stand behind, then like you didn't have mission in mind when you wrote that book, right? You weren't trying to achieve a purpose. You weren't trying to work towards a goal. So like mission, I think, is incredibly important. And the last thing I'll say on this is if you have a mission statement, don't get it confused with your tagline. And I see a lot of businesses do that. I ask them, what's your mission? And they say, our mission is to provide outsourced IT services for startup companies. And I'm like, that's a tagline. That's not a mission. That's what you do. That's not why you do it, right? Your mission is about why you do it. Your tagline is about what you do. So make sure you don't get those two confused. It plays to that old Simon Sinek quote: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Right? So have that mission and let that mission drive you and inform your storytelling. And you'll see just how powerful it is. Quick example, like you share that mission with people, they'll buy in. I was in an email chain recently trying to set an appointment, trying to get in front of a really heavy hitter in the media industry. Somebody who was the former head of networks, very high level executive with Viacom, very high level executive with Disney, who was named during the height of her career in the 90s one of Time Magazine's 25 most influential people in the country, right? Big, heavy hitter. I shared my mission with her in an email change, and her reply was, "In this with you," right? So all I did was share my mission, and she not only did she buy in and say, "Yes, I agree with you," but she said, "In this with you," which is a tacit commitment to help me further that mission, right? So like never underestimate that power, but if you want to be authentic, if you want to find success in sharing stories, like let them be mission driven, stand in that mission, stand on those values. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Be okay with not everybody getting on board, because if you're true to who you are and you're authentic, the right people will get on board with you. So just wanted to tack that on, and you can blame that pontification on Dom. It was his idea for me to chime in after Johnny. So if anybody got bored, it's Dom's fault.
Well, Tom, I'm going to expand on that, because one of the things I teach my students, my clients, when we're talking about you creating persona and creating stories and creating work that can be marketed, I emphasize to them that that you can't be everything to everybody. You'll end up being nothing to nobody. That's really important, because if you look at the highest producing people in any field, technology, sports, entertainment, politics. They are the most polarizing people in their industry. As many people love them as them. Steve Jobs, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, everybody that you can think of at the top of their field is equally loved or hated, and there's very little in between. And really there shouldn't be. People should either love you or hate you, love your work or hate your work. If they just are kind of like, I can take or leave it, then you failed as a communicator, as an artist, as a storyteller. Because I go back to this scripture in Revelation where God looked at the church of Lycia, and it says, because they were neither hot nor cold, he vomited them out of his mouth. And so you, as a storyteller, if you're not hot or cold, if you're just lukewarm, you're as good as vomit to your audience. And to Dom's point about the guy, should he be the face of the book if, because people aren't going to like him? That's okay. That's okay if people don't like him, because not everyone is going to like you. You're not for everybody. And I I look at Mike Lindell, the guy who created My Pillow. That that was a great brand, but his sales skyrocketed and went out of control when he became authentically himself in the public eye, supporting Donald Trump and getting active in political, and his sales went up when stores started banning his product. And he's more successful now than he ever was when he leaned into his authentic self. Just food for thought. I'm Johnny. I'm done. Ta-da.
Johnny, good stuff, brother. And there's the markets are so big. Imagine whoever it is, whether you're on the right side, the left side, wherever you want to go. If you're Rush Limbaugh, if you're Bill O'Reilly, if you're somebody on MSNBC, all these people have a huge market. So rather than playing in the middle and trying to appease everybody, if you believe in something, whatever it is, if you believe in vampires, go all in vampires. If you believe in positivity, go all in. But if it's faith, if you're Joel Osteen, whoever it is, go all in. And there's a market for you. I definitely believe that. John, go on, Tom.
I just want to jump in with like a very positive example of how being authentic can lead to real world change, right? So we talked about like the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell. I mean, let's be honest, or I'll just be honest. This is what I think. He's a lunatic, right? And and so I wanted to also give a really an example of how being authentic and standing in your values can really lead to real world change on a big scale with brands that we've all heard of, right? So I have a question, and then I'll give you the answer if nobody else knows. Does anybody know why McDonald's, which is the world's largest restaurant chain, instructed their pork suppliers to stop using gestation crates? This goes back about 10 years. I think a lot of, I think we remember like the use of gestation crates being in the news. It got a lot of attention. So if nobody wants to chime in and say why, I'll tell you why. It's because of a video that Chipotle made. Believe it or not. So Chipotle made a video. It's called Back to the Start. They partnered up with Willie Nelson, who did a cover of The Scientist from the Coldplay song, The Scientist. And they made a stop motion animation video. And the day after they premiered that video at the Grammy Awards in, I think, 2012, 2013, something like that. The day after they premiered that video in the Grammy Awards, it's 2 minutes and 15 seconds long, McDonald's put out that statement saying that they had instructed all of their pork suppliers to phase out the use of gestation crates, right? Because of the public support that video got, right? So remember that you can use, not only can you use authenticity to help build your brand to drive sales, but you can also use it to help drive positive change in the world. So I just wanted to hit that as like sort of a positive example to use to follow up on, Johnny's great examples of the fact that being authentically who you are can drive engagement for sure. But that it can also drive positive change in the world. And with that, I'd love to hear from our friend John, the resident radio guru in the room. John, what are your thoughts on storytelling in a sometimes challenging medium, right? On the radio, where people can only hear your voice.
To be honest with you, the number one bane of my existence, almost on a daily basis, is people wanting to come on my show and to be a subject matter expert and tell people what they know and tell people what they think they know and their opinions and do sales pitchy stuff. And the number one violators of that are PR publicists, and they just shoot emails. So the one thing I'll say is I've had conversations. I talk with everyone before they go on a show, and I tell them the format of my show is, number one, when they say, I want to come on your podcast and talk about this software which will improve blah, 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 as an example. And I tell them, number one, it's not a podcast, it's a syndicated radio show. And it's pitched to radio. It's doing for radio what Investigation Discovery Channel does for television. Now, if you watch their programs, every one of their programs, and by the way, they're usually number one or number two highest ad generated cable channels on television, and primarily women 25 to 54, which is where the purse strings of the economy for advertisers, that's what they're looking to get in front of. What they do is they tell stories. I'll give you an example. Joe Kenda doesn't tell you his expertise in homicide investigation, how many times he's been declared an expert in this and that, and this and that, gunshot, ballistic residue, all that stuff. He tells a story, and people consume it. So that's the number one thing is I tell people we can dovetail into your expertise towards the end, but if you don't have a story, I really don't care what your opinion is. And to be honest with you, people don't care either. Consumers don't care. When it's all about the guest or it's all about the host, and this is going to the authenticity part, it leaves out of the equation the listener. It stands for ego, easing guests out, easing your listener out. So when I use words like my, I, in my opinion, that all moves listeners away. So you're going to see the same guy, hear the same guy every time I'm on the radio show and podcast, every time. But it's not about me. It's about my guest story. Without naming names, I had someone approach me and want to come on the show. They had a tremendous story about overcoming domestic violence, but all they want to do was talk about their expertise on gaslighting and their book. That doesn't work in radio. It doesn't. So they decided not to do it. That was it. And I kept saying to them, your story is your power. That's what's going to get people to listen. That's what will get people to act on what you tell them. And that will give you credibility when you talk about what it is you're pitching or selling. If you want to make it a pitch fest or infomercial, it's not going to work. And I'm not interested. So the authenticity part, very quickly. When I do my music radio show, I'm on vacation right now, but if you listen middays in the Florida Keys at WKYZ FM, my on-air music name is Ripley. That's a long story how I got that. I've had people say to me, man, I don't know where you stand politically. And I go, thank you. And they'll say, I thought you were black. And I say, thank you. Or they thought I was taller, smaller, whatever it might be. And I say, thank you. Because it's not about me. It's about why are they listening to that station? When they're listening to my syndicated talk radio show and podcast, it's why are they choosing to listen to this? I need to always focus on the listener first. That's the most important person in the room. So, yeah, storytelling is the number one thing. Authenticity is number two. I don't try to be someone I'm not. But the close second, this is where I think people get lost in authenticity, is I don't try to convince people I'm some sort of expert or well-renowned guy like inside this room. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I'm not the smartest guy in my show, nor do I try to be. So that seems to be successful for me. Thanks so much.
Thank you, John. John, what do you think about the subject that, like Julie said, that people that say too much? Do you have people that come on that just try to pigeonhole their story in, cram it down, or get to this point of the low or the high, and that's the only story they got? Where you're like,
That's my job number one as the guy of the conversation. So what I tell them ahead of time is, imagine you and I are in a coffee shop, and there's some people hanging around listening, eavesdropping their conversation, but you're telling me why I need to go see this movie, what it is that you think is so powerful about it, and we're going to focus on your observations and your perceptions and how things affected you. That's what we're going to focus on, and your effort to get beyond that. So, what I tell them is, listen, it's not testifying in court. That bores everyone to tears. No one cares it was a rainy night on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. They don't give a damn about that. What they want to know is, what did you go through? What did you do? What motivated you? That's where the real power is in people's stories. So when they get into the weeds, I cut them off and I try to direct it back to something that is less detail specific and more oriented on their story, their perceptions, their journey.
love it, man. I appreciate you. Go on, Tom.
I was going to say, so what John's saying is when people start going, and then this fact happened, and then this fact, and then this fact, he pushes them to say, but we're therefore instead, right? That he pushes them to give color and context and provide the listeners with the sort of ups and downs and the journey that the story was, rather than just a factual recounting. And the other thing I think that's important about what John's saying is that what I'm hearing from what he's saying is, at the end of the day, a lot of these folks that he's talking about who come on who have a very clear agenda of the things they want to talk about, the things they want to say, the topics they want to cover, the things they want to speak to try to reinforce their expertise, or the fact that they're subject matter experts. They're trying to get on John's show for themselves, right? They're going there for what they want to do. They're not going there to try to provide value to John's audience, which is his mission every day on that show, right? And so if you go there in service of the same mission, I think, John and anybody else who hosts a show is going to welcome you with open arms if you're there to provide value to their audience. But if you're there for you, just like John said, they're gonna tell you to take a walk, right? I think that's an important thing to remember. You got to show up for the audience. You're there for them. You're not there for you. It's about them. It's not about you.
I think we had two people, John, then Prof T. Go on.
Yeah, very quick. I'll give an example. I could tell you a story about running away from home as a child, and I could tell you that I did it a couple times. And I was so mad when I did it, and I'll show them and look what they've done to me, walking down the street crying and all that stuff, and making about a block and then realizing I'm hungry and going back home. So that was the reality. What a lot of people try to do, instead of telling that story, they want to say, well, here, in my opinion, is why people run away from home. And then they make blanket statements about other people. And when people say, in my opinion, or they'll say, how about this? If you want to know what I think, and my answer is always, no, I don't want to know what you think. I want to know your story, because I have my own opinions as well. What's the old saying about opinions? We all got one. They're like, you know what's, and they all stink.
There you go. Come on, John, bring it. Hey, Prof T, what did you want to add there?
Yeah. So that, John Jay, I love what you're saying. And I totally agree. The only thing I was kind of wondering about is, when people say, in my opinion, that's just so overused now. And that's sort of, I think people use that to just kind of say, hey, I don't know everything. This is just my opinion, my 2 cents. So I think that's just something that, speakers have learned over the years to cover their butt. Secondly, people saying they're expert in this, expert in that. That's something that that could be another day. But if I'm looking for, if I need a new set of teeth, I'm finding a damn expert who knows what the hell they're doing. So, expert is subjective. And when people hire me for certain things, I damn well better know what the hell I'm talking about. So, I don't go around saying I'm an expert in this, that, or the third. But to your point, John Jay, somebody on your show, I would say they're already an expert if you're vetting them, bringing them on, and they're going to add value to your audience. And then finally, when someone says it was a cold, crisp night, that is actually in my book. My husband's sister and baby were murdered. And when I'm telling that story, I'm bringing the audience to that day on September 10th, 1995. It was a cold, crisp fall evening, and I got the phone call. So you're taking people on a journey in a sense. So I think it has to be of value. Sometimes people want to feel that cool air. They want to smell that fall foliage, and they're seeing in their mind. It wasn't a hot summer day. It wasn't freezing, snowing. So I just wanted to clarify those couple of things, but I agree wholeheartedly. Totally love this room. Just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Prof T. Back over to you guys.
Agree with her 100%. The cold, crisp night, I agree. That's short, that's concise. People can use theater of the mind. But when they start getting into it's 9:37 at night, it was a Tuesday, it was rainy. That's where I cut people off because generally that's where people get glazed eyeballs and no longer want to consume their product.
Right on, John. Where they were born, where they went to high school, what year they graduated. Yep. Move on. I wanted to say earlier when I'm reading books about um, all these books I read and study of people I'm publishing and stuff like that. Some people have a book of facts, and I can scroll right through all the facts to get to the story. So I'm learning how to speed read, and there's so many times where there's these basic facts. Well, I've seen these basic facts in 30 other books, and we're really in every other book in that genre. There's basic facts. Yes, I know. I expect these basic facts are going to be here. Move on now into your story. What is the story? How does it relate to these facts? How do you pull them out? Okay, I got something that's agitated me. Here you go. This is what agitated me. I've been wanting to say it. I can't stand when somebody tells the same story every time they're on a podcast, an interview, and it's a story that, like Julie was mentioning, it's maybe they go too far with the story. Like in the right setting, in an intimate setting, you can go deep into that story. But sometimes people want to crowbar the most intimate details of this story into every interview. Well, like John's saying, it's not the right. I don't know unless you two are talking about something and it's going down that path. If you need to talk about the day of this happened, or back in college when this happened, or this thing that happened at this point, and when I see it, I'm like, well, didn't that story have? That story is so precious. It's so important. And then you're just going to crowbar it in the first time you have an opportunity. The host asks you one question, how are you doing today? And you say, blah, 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 blah. And in 1996, this happened to my dad, or this happened to me and my dad, or this happened when I was working. Really? Your story is not more important than on first question or story one. In every interview, you're going to crowbar that story in. So I don't like it. That's on my, so that's Dom's annoyance. So Joyce, give us a story to bad segue. So I'll slow it down and let you tell. Not the smartest guys in the room. We're talking about storytelling tips, but therefore things that you've seen, things that you use, tips, tricks, whatever that help you tell a better story in any platform, whether it's talking to your grandchildren, whether it's talking to a business during a business presentation, whether you're writing a book, on a podcast, or you're on Clubhouse like we are right now. So Joyce, I slowed it down so not to pressure you with that bad segue. And here you go.
I appreciate that. I don't like, yeah. Again, as a podcast interviewer, I agree with John. We are the ones who know the story and need to guide them through. That's our job. I am a storyteller. That's how I describe myself. I tell canna stories. I'm very nichey, obviously. I tell the stories of the women building this industry. So I do have a very specific lane that I'm in. And I'm also an author in a book. It's called Courage for Cannabis. It's 16 stories from people across the country. And this month, I've decided to start being a storyteller on my Instagram feed. So at 4:20, because it's cannabis, at 4:20 on Thursdays, I'm reading one chapter of the book I started last week. So that's been pretty fun to get feedback that way. And I've also been working on my canna-friendly fiction for women. So storytelling culture, our entire world is ruled by stories. I'm also a person of faith, so my story is from the Torah. Some people's is from the Bible. I love the idea of mission and purpose and impacting change because I'm still having trouble. You know, the whole monetization of a podcast is a bit tricky. I use it as a marketing tool for the cannabis industry, but impacting change, that gives me more drive, or I guess it's just part of my mission and purpose. So I don't know if I really have any tips, but I think, or I feel like I'm doing much of what is being espoused here as good practice. So that makes me feel good. And I am Joyce, and I'm complete.
Joyce, thank you. We always appreciate you, and you're doing a lot of it, podcasting and telling stories. Just for, I need to know this, and I understand 420, pause for the cause. What is the number 420? What does that, what is the significance of 420?
I can't tell it exactly. It has some sort of mystical connection to some California high school kids who would leave their building at 4:20 and get high. I really believe that's the truth. But again, I'm not quite sure. So it's out there, 4:20. It's one of those weird kind of things. I'm a late adapter. I'm a middle-aged, woman who plays tennis and wears pearls. I'm not that hip, but I do like talking about my part of the industry because that's really where I can impact change and try to change the narrative around cannabis and caregivers. That's my goal.
Well, more power to you, Joyce. And I'll just say that if my dear friend Michelle, who has had epilepsy since she was a little girl, sometimes 10 seizures a day, if cannabis or something like that could help her have one less seizure, then Joyce, you're doing good work. So stay the course. Okay, Holly, a storyteller that is helping other people tell stories now. I've noticed Holly's got a whole lot. I might take Holly's course. I think that's what I want to do. She's got a course helping storytellers. Come on, that's what we need. Holly, give us some tips. What do you got for us?
Good morning, everyone. I agree with so much that's already been said. It's hard to think of something else to bring in. And, going back on what's been said,
I think I might have bumped her down. I prop her up, then I was trying to make her a moderator while she was talking. So let's get her back here. Okay, Holly, hold
okay.
on here. Hold on. You deserve more respect than this. Okay, Holly, my friend who is a great storyteller, just started to share some tips with us, and I so rudely cut her off. And now, Holly, the stage is yours.
How dare you, Dom? How dare you?
Thank you.
I didn't even notice. I was just talking away. So I will. There's been so much good stuff said already, and there's two things I want to hit on. One is when you can, or when you connect emotionally with your reader or your listener, then you've got them. You can tell them all day long, but until you bring in those emotions and they can put themselves in your place, maybe not in the exact same situation, but in the same emotional situation, then you've got them. And that is a big trick to me to good storytelling. And then the other thing is write about or talk about whatever medium you're using about what you know. Because nothing will kill a story quicker than talking about a cowboy with a 6-shooter and he shoots 8 times. I mean, when you think about little things like that, and there's times when you get into things that you don't know, but that's when you do the research and you learn. And so, keeping it in your scope and the things you know so that you are able to connect with them emotionally factually, I think it just makes for a great story. So I just wanted to add those two things.
Holly, thank you. Me and Holly worked on a book recently, and at one point, a box was described, and the box was like uh, a giant box, let's say as big as a car, and right, yeah. Tom just looked at me like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And that's how I read the story, and that's how Holly read the story, and we were both like, we froze on this box, on this good story, and we both froze on this box. Now, once we reached out to the author and said, "Hey, this box, something's odd here. We're in the middle of this story," and then the author said, "Oh, the box was actually taped together. Somebody had made the box to." Really be a jerk. They made this giant box and stuffed all of somebody's belongings in this box, and no regular box would do. So they had to tape like 5 other boxes together to make this box that really wouldn't fit all their stuff. And then we said, I get it. But before that clarification, we were out of the story. And that's you never want to take the reader out of the story or the listener out of the story with big words. With somebody told me, well, I said, there's too many big words in this. And the author said, well, I want them to have to I want to educate them. I want them to have to look it up. And I'm like, oh, and then they're going to go look it up, and their wife's going to say, hey, can you come help me carry this here? Or the plane's going to land and they're never going to go back to your book. So never anything that takes them out of the story. So Elise was giving us some good storytelling tips the other day. The one that she said really hit me. She was talking about right message, right time to the right person, making sure your message is really like, Elise, you want to explain that and share some storytelling tips with us?
Sure thing. And I love this room. So thanks so much for pinging me in and inviting me on stage. I think there is a lot to be said for all of the different styles and approaches and ways that we tell stories. And Dominick, to your point, the other day I was talking a little bit about how a lot of that can depend on the time, the place, the person, and the story itself. That said, it's interesting in this conversation today, some of the concepts that we've kind of shared and discussed are all very valuable pieces of advice to help us become better writers and better storytellers. But I can't help but, as I'm listening and I'm kind of taking some of these things in, I'm thinking to myself, it's interesting because a story, if it hits right for the right person at the right time, how it is shared is going to be the right way it's shared. And that is a really roundabout way of saying when we tell stories, there are tools and tricks that we can use to ensure that we're articulating ourselves and our stories as best as possible. But at the end of the day, if there is that authentic oomph or spark or, that intangible essence to the story, however it's written, whatever flaws it may have, may just end up being, that perfect articulation to resonate with the people that it needs to resonate with. That's not to say, don't be a better storyteller, don't work on it, don't improve it. But that's something that I've noticed as well. And I think, I can't remember who had said this earlier, but somebody had made a really interesting point about people writing a story about a character or a hero's journey that's not necessarily something that they've walked through, and how it may not be the case that that story would sell well because of the individual who wrote it not being a good face for that story. And to have a perfectly vulnerable moment, that really that bummed me out to hear that thought, because one would have to imagine that any creator, when it comes to storytelling, who is able to put themselves in the shoes of a character that they may not necessarily actually be, and to be able to live through and write through that emotional experience, um, you know, probably has something to add for that character. and may be able to tell that character's story or in a unique way. But if I can add anything to the conversation, it's that hopefully when we tell stories, we do it as best we can. There are different approaches. There are different ways that we can tell stories. We can find our voice and use it in a different way. But I think at the end of the day, if it has that authentic essence that resonates with people, places, and things at the right time, on the right level, the story will prevail above some of the techniques that may or may not be best selling. I don't know if that's helpful, but I'm complete.
I just want to, if I'm right about what Elise is talking about here, I want to dig into that just a little bit, because I think there's a ton of value there. And how it came across to me from what Elise was saying is that it is okay for storytellers to craft stories or to tell stories that are not, that are not their exact lived experience, right? And I think she's right. I mean, you look at the world of fiction. If that wasn't the case, then fiction wouldn't exist, right? Because people would only be able to convey their stories that they have personally lived well, right? And in which case, those would not be works of fiction, right? They would be works of biography or autobiography. And so I think, to me, what that really pulls out is this idea that it's not the details that matter, it's the intention behind them, really, right? So you could have some experience as sort of a cowboy or a really good understanding of like cowboy lifestyle, but you could then take that experience and apply it to a space adventure, right? So like a lot of people have referred to like Star Wars as kind of a space Western, right? It kind of is in a lot of ways, right? You could tell basically the same story with somebody riding a horse instead of riding around in a spaceship, right? With somebody using a 6-shooter instead of using a lightsaber, right? It's really much more about why they're doing the things they do, right? And also Star Wars is a great example of a hero's journey, by the way. But it's really about why the characters are doing the things they do, the motivations behind them, the emotions behind them, the desires, and the outcomes, rather than what exactly it is they're using to get there. And it's akin to, the mission thing that I was talking about before, and that Simon Sinek quote, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. In a similar fashion, what really matters is why you do what you do, not what exactly your mode of accomplishment is, right? So in my case, why I do what I do is to humanize the world of business, right? The way that I do it is primarily through video creation and communication, right? Because that's what I know how to do, right? That's the toolbox that I have at my disposal. But what's really important is why I do it. That's what people can get on board with. That's what people can identify with. That's what people can share and develop emotional bonds to. So why you do it is really what matters. The vehicle to get there is less important. It doesn't matter if you're driving a truck or you're driving a station wagon or a compact car, whatever the case is. If people can get in on that journey, then that's really the important thing. The vehicle is immaterial, right? So I just wanted to throw that in, share that thought, dig into that on what Elise was talking about.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Elise. And I want to just jump back into that point of somebody not being the face of a story, just to clarify. Or sometimes it would be all right to go fiction with your story, where you could combine multiple characters to become one character. In the specific case, and I will say specific, and I'll keep it brief. And one of the conversations I was talking about, an author came to me with a story where they had they were helping a young girl, and then fell in love with that young girl, and went to prison for actions that were inappropriate. I don't think this guy can ever be the face of the story. As soon as that comes up, I'm telling you, you could write some fictional account or something like that. But that story like that, I don't see how that person could ever be the face. They're going to be hated. Another story where a man tried to murder his son, and I don't know. I'm not seeing how. And this could be maybe. I think they need, if they're determined to share that story, I don't see how they could sit somewhere selling this story of either of those two cases that I told. So that's why. Do they need uh, pen names? Do they need ghostwriters? Do they need to make it fiction? Do they need to pull themselves out of that environment? Because I don't think people are going to receive them very well. And those were the cases specifically. So happens. Sometimes I'm on a meeting with somebody and I turn my Zoom camera off because I'm thinking, I don't know where I go from here. So that's my reality. Okay, somebody that brings us back to reality, always has good tips, always wears a nice hat. Dr. Tachi, I heard you're on break for a week or 2 weeks, so I'm glad you're here today. What do you got for us, Dr. Tachi? Storytelling tips.
Hey there. Okay, I'm actually on break till the middle of February, so
I can't. What am I gonna do at 5 o'clock when I go to Instagram and there's no pre-show on?
well, there will be some Be More Earth things up, so I'm not completely gone. Just no media scope to the middle of February, but there'll be stuff there to help. Don't worry. So, storytelling. This is a key thing. Learning how to tell the story, knowing how to tell your story. So I'm going to go the fictional end of this. When you and somebody already said this, but I'm going to reiterate because it's important. If it is not something from your experience, be damn sure that you research it and know before you put it out there. Whether you are doing a podcast that is fictional, that has an aspect of fiction, some short sort of show that's fiction, whether you're writing something that's fictional, any type of media, you need to make sure it's from the correct point of view. That means ask people if you don't know. Don't just write it and think, well, this is fine. Ask people who are actually of that culture, of that know those events, etc. And I'll give a quick example. So when I was in grad school, I was a tour guide of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, D.C., which is where they make our money. And so I remember, because we had to know money inside and out and tell people, I still remember to this day, well, our money is not actually paper. It's a high quality fabric with red and blue threads throughout to prevent counterfeiting. So I remember all of that from the spiel. So we had to know money in and out. When Rush Hour, I don't remember if it was Rush Hour or Rush Hour 2, the one that Rosalind Sanchez was in. So with Rush Hour, they were talking about, it was Rush Hour 1, the first one. They were talking about the plates that were being stolen. And they said, well, plates were being stolen, or they're usually stored at the mint. I said, now that's a lie, because the mint is where coins are made, not the fabric / paper money. The Bureau of Engraving is where they make the foldable currency. So just something that small, the average person probably would not have known, but I knew because I worked at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. So whenever you're doing things like that, just being sure that you have it down to the details, because there will always be somebody like me in the audience saying, now that's a damn lie. So with that, that's my point, and I release the mic.
Dr. Tachi, that's fantastic. I'm writing with a guy right now who lived in New York City, and I'll write something and he'll say, he's always on me. He'll be like, that's lazy writing. That's what but he'll say, nobody does that in New York City. That's not how it works. I lived up there 10 years. This is what we do after work, or this is, and right. He lived there, and something I'm saying is wrong. Or you guys know my friend, Brian P. Swift. We write some stuff together. We wrote a screenplay about a superhero in a wheelchair. And so sometimes I'd call him and I'd be like, Brian, because Brian will say, I went out for a walk. And, and I'm like, well, really, he's in a wheelchair. Do you call that a walk? And can I say that? And so I would clarify with Brian, who's our quadriplegic friend, what what he thinks. Would I say roll? We went rolling down the road, or what do you say? He's like, no, I say we went out for a damn walk, So, just like Dr. Chachi's saying, if you said meant and it was really the other place, man, you'd sound foolish. So I think that research and knowing what the hell you're talking about, I think a lot of people in this room have said that today. So, okay, let's continue. We got Ahmad, and then you know how we do this. It's that time of day. We got places to go. We got one more show of the year. It's the holidays. Ahmad, give us a storytelling tip, or ask a question, but go on. Then Tom's going to do his thing because he sold us out last week and he can do it this week. So, Ahmad, what do you got for us? Storytelling tip. Sometimes Ahmad comes back, but Tom, that means it is on to you for our holiday wrap up. Big show. Let's we put the pressure on him. Big show. Christmas wrap up. Go on, Tom.
Yeah. So, I think we've covered a lot today. We've had a ton of great advice, a ton of great thoughts come up in the course of this discussion. Great feedback from the folks up here on stage. Good questions asked and hopefully answered in part, at least, by myself and other folks in the room. So really appreciate everybody's participation. This year has been really interesting one for me, personally and professionally. A fair number of ups and downs. I see Ahmad just said he's had some technical problems. So Ahmad, hopefully we'll see you here next week. We got one more room of the year, one more show of the year, one more time for Dom and I to not be the smartest guys in the room in 2022, and we hope you'll all be there. In the meantime, the last things I want to say this week are very straightforward. One is Happy Hanukkah to everyone. Two is Merry Christmas to everyone. And three is happy and safe holidays, whatever you observe or celebrate. Spend time. I hope you have the opportunity to spend time with friends and family and really enjoy this time of year. If you're in the Northeast, or actually not even just the Northeast, stay warm in the coming days. I know we've got this huge, crazy weather system coming in to the U.S., coming sweeping down across Canada. So stay warm wherever you are, and tell good stories. Keep telling stories. Tell stories in your personal life. Tell stories professionally. However, whenever, tell stories and give people the opportunity to develop relationships with you and your brand and your business through those stories. So yeah, keep telling stories, keep it up, always working on improving stories. It's one thing that I do. Every story I tell, I'm consistently always looking for ways to improve the telling of that story to make it more impactful and relatable for the audience. So please do the same in your storytelling. And we will see you guys next Wednesday morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern for our last show of the year. So until then, for Dom, I'm Tom, and thanks for being here with us, because we are not the smartest guys in the room. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.